Hi everybody, this is Jo Comerford and welcome to Keeping Hope Alive. This is the first in a series of about 14 videos. And before I do anything, I have to thank Jasper, Max, and Zara, who have been 3 interns this summer who have held the vision for this video series so close and interviewed remarkable people across our entire district. And so what the heck are we doing, Jasper, Max, Zara, and me this summer? But by the way, they did all of the work. We wanted to, in this really difficult time for our region and our nation, speak with the people who were on the ground every single day caring for their community in a whole bunch of ways, from healthcare to food security and beyond. They went to where these people live and work and play to talk with them about their work, what keeps them motivated, what keeps them hopeful against all odds, what keeps them going forward. We believe in our team that hope is a political act. We can choose, of course, not to be hopeful in dire times. We can choose to give up. We can choose to throw our hands up and say, oh, it's just too hard. But the people you're going to see in this series, they haven't thrown up their hands. And I hope they're as much of an inspiration to you as they are to me and to Jasper, Max, and Zara, because their example, it's going to keep us going in the hard times. And I hope it's going to keep you going too. So enjoy Keeping Hope Alive. Enjoy hearing from these wonderful people. And thanks for all you do in your community, because we know we're surrounded by people like you who every day make things just a little bit better. And I really have to shout out a huge cheer for Northampton Open Media. As Max and Jasper and Zara would tell you, they have spent the summer using the equipment from this wonderful entity to make these videos. So go Northampton Open Media, go Open Media, period. We need you so much, and thank you so much. Without further ado, you're going to now see the first episode, which features the wonderful, extraordinary Monte Belmonte, who has the biggest heart of any person I know. Now to Monte.
My name is Monte Belmonte. That's a fake name. My real name is Christopher Belmonte, but everybody calls me Monte. And I have lived in the Valley for 22 years, grew up in the Boston area. I'm a radio host who spent 20 years at 93.9 The River WRSI in Northampton, and who spent the last 2.5 years at New England Public Media in Springfield. I host a show called The Fabulous 413 with my co-host Khalees Smith, and also spend a great deal of time right here in this theater, the Shea Theater in Turners Falls, as the volunteer president of the board. One thing I love about the Shea is that it's owned by the town of Montague and supported by the community. So the arts is a sticky wicket and yet is a very important part of the human experience. And as we are seeing on the federal level, the idea of supporting the arts has been devalued from our taxpayer base. So the fact that the town of Montague leaves this, instead of developing it, selling it to a developer and turning it into housing or retail or what have you, has committed to turning this place into a home for the arts and for conversation, and that we as the nonprofit board can support that, and that we get support from people in the community, from businesses in the community, from individuals, and that we can present all sorts of different types of art here at the Shea is incredible. Everything from the reason I got involved with the Shea in the first place, which was my kids' involvement in the Young Shakespeare Players, doing full and uncut Shakespeare performances for free, and stimulating the young mind with the words of the bard, all the way up to a couple weeks ago when we had the 5-time Grammy Award-winning band from South Africa, Ladysmith Black Mambazo here. So the fact that we are multi-purpose, we've had community conversations here about the licensing of the dam, which is right down the street, and we've also had weirdo immersive theater where you go in every nook and cranny of the building that has been redesigned to recreate what it might be like to be inside the belly of a whale. So the weirdness is really what keeps me excited. And building off of that, we kind of went into the board and the running of this theater with a very theatrical, especially improv theatrical kind of mindset, which is yes and. So if somebody has an idea of something they want to bring to the theater, we, as much as we can possibly, say yes to that idea. And what can you bring to the table to help make this happen? Who do you know that can help make this continue? So being kind of an open book for all sorts of creative expression is really exciting. There's a guy who lives right across the street who's most of his time is spent in tech, but he loves digital music and EDM and that sort of thing. So we had like an all day long 6 DJ dance party here a couple weeks ago called Extension Chords. And this DJ from New York named Daedalus, who worked with MF Doom and is like, worked with all these high profile hip hop artists, etc., is here, spinning music while all these crazy images are being projected. That's something that was fun to say yes to. I think one of the greatest concert experiences I've ever had in my life, not just at the Shea, was when Rhiannon Giddens, who is a country, blues, folk, almost genre-less musician, it was her and her instruments and one microphone in this theater that was designed to be kind of pre-amplification. You could have not even turned her microphone on. And it was so wonderful, it was so beautiful. She's been a narrator on the Ken Burns PBS documentary Country. She's a historian, like an ethnomusicologist in the history of country music. And her performance here was just so stunning. I was weeping and weeping through the entirety of that performance. It was really one of the best concert experiences of my life, let alone experiences at the Shea. One of the aha moments for me about engaging the public in a way of getting involved in things that you care about was when the early days that I was at 93.9 The River, we did all these classic radio giveaway type things. So we had Red Sox tickets, and it was right after they had won the World Series for the first time, and we were at a car dealership on King Street in Northampton. We hid some Red Sox tickets in one of the glove compartments of the cars, and if you went and test drove the car and opened the glove compartment, you could get these Red Sox tickets. Sounds like a great idea. People love the Red Sox. You'd think people would be lining up to do that. That was on a Saturday morning, and like 4 people showed up. But the next day, on a Sunday nonetheless, when most people don't want to go out and do anything, we took over the APE gallery, which at that time was on the 3rd floor of Thorne's Marketplace. And we had a kids concert for kids and their families featuring the Neilds, who also did the Joe Comerford theme song. Jocomerford. It's easy. Hey, never mind. Anyway, the Neilds doing a kids concert, and you had to pay to go to this concert. It wasn't free. You weren't going to win anything, but all the money was going to go to Safe Passage, which is this great organization that helps women and their families navigate through domestic violence. Hundreds of people showed up on a Sunday to pay with their families to hear great music, to do something together as a community, and to support this great organization. And that was a really big aha moment for me, where I said, this, I think, is what our listeners, and I think maybe most people, want. They want to engage in a community, they want to do something together, and they want to be able to do something meaningful. I have a penchant for the dramatic, so you might be able to tell by my hat and my shirt and my just general demeanor. And it also dawned on me, in light of that experience with the Neilds and Safe Passage and that people might want to engage even further in the community. So I was approached by this organization called the Cancer Connection in Florence to see if I would do a fundraiser for them. And I decided I would mildly torture myself by doing 2 things that I hate, which are camping and being out in the cold. And for more than a decade, I took over the courthouse lawn in downtown Northampton and said, I'm not going to leave until I raise X amount of dollars for this organization called the Cancer Connection. So this ridiculous publicity stunt idea, but for a very good cause like the Cancer Connection, which for free helps people navigate what it's like to become the medical experiment that you become when you get cancer. It seemed like a really fun way to get people involved. Fast forward a couple of years, people started camping out with me. It turned into this big, huge thing that lasted more than a decade. And Jo was very much involved with it many, many times, both before she was a senator and after. And then, because I think we were doing a kind of more traditional fundraiser for the food bank, we put a shopping cart out in front of Whole Foods and said, go in there and bring us a can and we'll donate it to the food bank. All good and great. Had a meeting with the food bank and they said, if you go and buy a can of pinto beans for $3 at Whole Foods and donate it to us, that's great. But if you gave us the $3, we can go turn that into X number of meals because of the warehouse resources we have, the relationships we have with supermarkets, the federal and state dollars that are coming into us. So your dollars will go a lot further if you were to do a fundraiser for us rather than just a can drive. And I think they were a little jealous of how successful the Cancer Connections fundraiser was. So we had a brainstorming session. They said, what if you took a shopping cart and went door to door in downtown Northampton to the businesses and asked for some money? I said, what if I pushed a shopping cart all the way from Northampton to Greenfield and asked the listeners for money the whole way? And that was the light bulb moment. And again, people really gravitated towards the idea of, I want to be involved. I want to do something. I want to feel my feet walking along the way. Can I even walk 26 miles? And that happened that way for a few years. Congressman McGovern became our congressman here. He's a big advocate for anti-hunger issues in DC, and he has become a huge part of that march, as is Joe. We extended the march to 2 days and 43 miles, starting in Springfield, because in reality, that's where the most people are benefiting from the work of the food bank. And again, it all just comes down to the idea that people want to feel like they belong, that they are part of a community, and that they can do something meaningful to make some change. It is seeming like we are entering some very dark times. And one of the things that helps me remain hopeful is that we here in Western Massachusetts have created a bubble. Now, are we going to be completely immune and removed from all of the things that are happening outside of our control from DC? Absolutely not. We will be dramatically impacted. But the bubble we are part of is a bubble that we created because we really have a strong community. I like to say it's a bubble, but we inflated that bubble, and we keep that bubble inflated. And we keep it inflated by being politically engaged. We keep it inflated by getting together and doing things. We keep it inflated by experiencing the arts. I mean, it's usually the poets that any sort of fascist is going to go and attack first because they know how inspirational the words of the artists can be. The comedians are who they go after first, and we're seeing that happen right now. So the fact that we are still finding ways to experience the arts, to support the arts, to make the arts thrive, even if it's a preaching to the choir still needs to let it out once in a while, and that bolsters our energy. And I think the fact that we have such a big commitment to each other is going to help us get through what are no doubt going to be extraordinarily tough times. But I think we as a community here will be able to weather it better than other places because we have each other. I think it is as important to be a joiner as it is to be a leader. So I think really you have to lead yourself with your heart. So what is something that matters to you? Is it food security? There are innumerable ways that you can get involved to make sure that your neighbors have enough to eat. I know one of the folks that you can volunteer with is part of this series as well, with Kirsten Levitt and Stone Soup Cafe. Is it politics? Get involved with a campaign or write to other states that are advocating for things that you don't agree with. You don't always have to lead a charge. I think it's as important to be a part of a thing as it is to lead a thing. And it's also important to lead a thing. If you see something missing that is not being adequately covered and you have a good idea to do it. Do it and fail. Try. Don't give up on the idea because it didn't work the first time. And it sounds Pollyannish, and maybe I am overly hopeful when it comes to that sort of thing. But all we have is this very limited time on this terrestrial plane. So, make the most of it. And that may be like taking better self-care and having more fun and doing more fun things and experiencing more art. But it also, you should hopefully feel inspired then enough to get involved in things that matter to you to make some real change, and hopefully change that you'll get to see a glimpse of before we shuffle off this mortal coil. Is that Shakespeare? Probably is. That's why I got involved in this place in the first place, though. As far as the Shay, if the arts is something that you care about, Franklin County is one of the poorest counties in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and there is an idea that it's bread or roses, and I think it should be bread and roses, and the arts is something that, again, gets devalued a lot of the time. So if making sure that the arts is something that is accessible and affordable to people in a place like Turner's Falls or Greenfield or the greater Franklin County, and you want to get involved, we are a 501c3 nonprofit who is always taking contributions. But if you have a creative idea that you want to do at the Shea, again, we have this yes and mentality. Reach out to our director, Linda Tardif, reach out to me, and pitch us your idea, and we'll try to figure out how to make it happen. Or if none of those things work for you, but you just want to be here in this space, you know, we need ushers, we need security folks sometimes, we need people to help with cleanups and things of that nature. You can find out the myriad ways to get involved with this theater by going to Shea Theater, that's theater with an ER, the less pretentious spelling, sheatheater.org.